I mean, I think you should do a riot, but what about MLK? Before I get started, I just want to let you know that I've got a lot of resources in the description for you to educate yourself on Black Lives Matter and find out how to help. I'm going to talk about the specifics in the outro, but I know not all of you watch that long, so I wanted to say it up front as well. Anyway, I've seen a lot of people using Martin Luther King Jr. to both condemn and support, well, I don't love to say riots because I feel like there's an inherently negative connotation there, but I don't have a lot of other language available, so okay, riots. And honestly, I think a lot of you are wrong on both sides. And please don't mistake that as me trying to draw any kind of equivalency. I think the people trying to condemn riots are being way more harmful. But the rest of you guys, you could be a little more helpful. And now, 2 disclaimers before we dive in. First, I am a white person. I should not be your only source for this information. It's a shitty fact that a lot of white people just don't care about issues that only Black people are talking about. So what I'm trying to do here is leverage my privilege to get through certain people's thick fucking skulls. That being said, the best thing to do is to listen to Black people. I'm gonna link some videos down below so you can do just that. Fucking do it, I'm serious. And second, although I like a lot of his ideas, I personally don't fully agree with King. I'm not a pacifist. I support all the people protesting right now, even the ones quote-unquote rioting. While I don't like violence, I fully acknowledge that sometimes it's the only viable option, and I think that's the case in our current situation. I also don't find property destruction to be equivocal to violence, but that's a discussion for another time. TLDR, this channel is very much pro-punch-a-Nazi. With all that out of the way, let's get into it. So, let's start by presenting the 2 opposing arguments that I see the most. The first would be the argument that, well, Martin Luther King Jr. said don't do violence, so how dare you set a cop car on fire? You should just protest peacefully and not make me uncomfortable while you patiently wait for incredibly racist institutions to maybe give you the basic human right to, oh, I don't know, not get fucking shot in the streets. And maybe that's a little bit unfair, but that sure is what y'all sound like to me. Hashtag stop telling Black people how they should protest, you dipshits. The opposing argument usually comes from the King quote that says a riot is the language of the unheard. And I think that's a great quote, but it is unfortunately being taken out of context. If you look at the full quote, I'll link the speech it's from in the description, you can see that he is pretty clearly saying that he doesn't support rioting. However, like most things, it's a little more nuanced than that. So, we've got 2 different sides that think they know the actual King. But do they? I'm gonna have to say no, and to explain why, let's talk about King's views. I'm going to be drawing a lot on King's letter from Birmingham jail here, and I'd encourage you to read it yourself. It's free online, it's not very long, and I found it to be pretty accessible. I'll link that below if you're interested. But there is one section in particular that I think is especially relevant to the debate we're seeing currently. I'm going to read it for you, albeit with some small changes because there are certain words I just don't feel super comfortable using as a white person in 2020. In this section, King is addressing criticism of the protests that have been going on in Birmingham, and it reads as follows. You deplore the demonstrations taking place in Birmingham, but your statement, I am sorry to say, fails to express a similar concern for the conditions that brought about the demonstrations. I'm sure that none of you would want to rest content with the superficial kind of social analysis that deals merely with effects and does not grapple with underlying causes. It is unfortunate that demonstrations are taking place in Birmingham, but it is even more unfortunate that the city's white power structure left the Black community with no alternative. Let me say that last part again. It is unfortunate that demonstrations are taking place in Birmingham, but it is even more unfortunate that the city's white power structure left the Black community with no alternative. Now, King emphasizes time and time again in this letter that he believes in nonviolent direct action, and that's why I think the people using the "a riot is the language of the unheard" quote are ultimately misguided. King would not tell you to punch a Nazi. But I strongly believe that he would be much more concerned with the underlying issues that have led people to riot than the riots themselves. And I think a lot of people invoking King to denounce riots are the very same people he was speaking against here. So, listen. If you really don't like riots, if you really believe that we should only pursue change through pacifism, then fine. I disagree with you, but we can have our opinions. But when you choose to focus your outrage on riots instead of what is causing the riots, then you've placed yourself on the side of the oppressors. If you are just as concerned with people smashing some windows or looting a Target as you are with the police brutally murdering Black people, then maybe you need to reevaluate your priorities. These protests wouldn't be happening if our government had done something earlier. People would not be out in the streets setting things on fire if they had listened to any of the peaceful protests that came before. Black people have been telling you that there is a problem for decades, but you didn't pay attention. So if you really want to end riots, then work on ending all the racism and injustice and horrific police brutality that left people with no choice but to protest in a way that you couldn't ignore anymore. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. This was a bit of a heavier topic than my last one, huh? It wasn't actually the one that I had planned to release next, but in light of everything going on, I decided I need to get it out as soon as possible. That's also why you might have noticed a little less editing. I really sped up my process. Like I said, there will be videos of Black creators talking about the protests and the pros and cons of rioting linked in the description. I also have a playlist on this channel of mainly Black creators talking about other Black Lives Matter issues, including the issues of propaganda and the practicalities of abolishing the police and prisons. In addition to that, I'm going to be linking resources for you personally to help out with the movement. There are things you can do, even if you're not able to go out and protest or donate money. You can sign the Black Lives Matter petition to defund the police, for one. You can stream Zoe Amir's fundraising video. You can confront the racist people in your life. Just contribute in any way you can. This is gonna be a really long fight, and we all need to be doing our part. I hope you guys are doing as well as you can be right now, and I'll see you in the next one.